This single decision changed history forever. On June 22, 1941, over 3 million German soldiers stormed into the Soviet Union. It was the largest invasion in human history. Hitler called it Operation Barbarossa. He expected total victory within 6 months. Instead, it became the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. So why did this colossal gamble fail? The answer lies in one fatal miscalculation: underestimating the Soviet Union. To understand the failure, you have to look at what Germany got wrong from the very start. In 1941, Hitler assumed the Soviet state was a rotten structure. One hard kick, he said, and the whole thing would collapse. He believed the Red Army was poorly led, the people would welcome German troops as liberators, and the vast distances of Russia could be conquered before winter. Every single one of these assumptions was catastrophically wrong. The first turning point came in July 1941, just weeks into the invasion. The German army had advanced hundreds of miles, capturing hundreds of thousands of Soviet soldiers. But instead of a single decisive push toward Moscow, Hitler ordered a split. One army group went north toward Leningrad, another went south toward Ukraine and its oil fields. The third went east toward Moscow. This divided the German forces just when they needed to concentrate. The Soviet Union's sheer size meant that even a massive army could be stretched thin. Germany had no reserves. Every mile they advanced made supply lines longer and more vulnerable. The second turning point was the Battle of Smolensk in July and August. The Germans won the battle, trapping hundreds of thousands of Soviet troops. The Red Army did not surrender. They kept fighting, retreating, and regrouping. The Germans had expected to destroy the Soviet army in a few massive encirclements. Instead, the Red Army absorbed the blows and kept bleeding the invaders. Every week of delay gave Stalin time to mobilize fresh divisions from the east. The Germans were winning battles, but they were losing the war of attrition. The third turning point came in October 1941. The German army finally launched Operation Typhoon, the final push toward Moscow. At first, it seemed to work. German tanks broke through Soviet lines and surrounded entire armies. But then, the weather turned. The autumn rains turned dirt roads into rivers of mud. German tanks and trucks got stuck. Horses, which pulled most of the German supply wagons, died by the thousands. The German advance slowed to a crawl, and while the Germans struggled through mud, the Soviet Union moved its entire government and industry east of the Ural Mountains. Factories that had produced tanks in Moscow were reassembled in Siberia within weeks. The Red Army would never run out of weapons. The fourth turning point was the winter of 1941. By December, German troops were within sight of Moscow, but they were exhausted, undersupplied, and freezing. The German High Command had not planned for a winter campaign. They had no winter uniforms, no antifreeze for vehicles, no cold weather lubricants for guns. Meanwhile, Soviet troops, used to the cold, launched a massive counteroffensive on December 5. Fresh Siberian divisions, trained for winter warfare, pushed the Germans back. The myth of German invincibility was shattered. Now, let's look at one soldier's experience. Private Hans von Luck was a panzer officer in the 7th Panzer Division. In his diary, he wrote of the first weeks of the invasion. "We were unstoppable. We thought the war would be over by August." But by October, his tank company had lost half its vehicles to mud and breakdowns. By December, he described his men huddled in frozen foxholes, eating frozen bread, and using captured Soviet sheepskin coats. He wrote, "We had no idea the Russians could fight like this. They were not the backward peasants we were told about. They were disciplined, determined, and they had more tanks than we could count." The consequences of Operation Barbarossa were devastating for both sides. The Soviet Union lost over 4 million soldiers in 1941 alone, but Germany lost over 800,000 men, thousands of tanks and aircraft, and the initiative. The war in the East became a brutal war of attrition that Germany could not win. The failure of Barbarossa meant that Germany would now fight a two-front war against the Soviet Union, the United States, and Britain. It was a strategic disaster from which the Third Reich never recovered. So here's the question for you. If Hitler had focused all his forces on capturing Moscow in the summer of 1941, could the Soviet Union have been knocked out of the war? Or was the entire invasion doomed from the start by the sheer scale of the Soviet Union and its industrial capacity? Let us know in the comments.